Do you know of someone who ruined their life in just a matter of minutes? If so, how did they do it? Guy I went to high school with was kicked out of his college ROTC and moved back home. After some time of living at home, his dad walked into his bedroom and went off about him being a lazy ass and needing to do something with his life. He decided he was going to take his gun and rob a bank. Supposedly, the gun wasn't loaded, but he did successfully rob the bank and get away. Some time went by. He moved out of his parents' house and started living it up. He eventually told someone he trusted. That person turned him in. He was arrested and charged. He got a count for every person who was in the bank because he had a gun. You can decide if he ruined his life when he decided to rob the bank or when he decided to tell someone that he did it. Some guy tried to come into my nightclub when he was clearly too drunk. I made the call to not let him in, so he starts shouting at me and tries to aggressively walk up to me. I put my hands up in defense, and he's pushing back against me. Then the dude lunged at my boss next to me, so my boss shoves him. The guy tumbles backwards and slams the back of his head on a curb. He get paralyzed. Tried to take my boss to court for $15 million, but the camera showed this guy instigating everything. When I was in my early 20s, I worked as an energy worker. One day, my partner and I were given a task that we weren't qualified for. Our supervisor pressured us, and we agreed. We were working on a generator when I stepped out to the truck to grab some water. That's when I heard a loud electrical discharge and an explosion. I ran back and saw that my friend had been caught in an arc flash. I rushed to get a fire blanket, put out the flames, and called for help. He survived but suffered serious consequences. That incident changed my perspective on workplace safety forever. If we had insisted that we weren't prepared for the job, this could have been avoided. So if you ever find yourself in a dangerous situation at work, don't be afraid to say no. A neighbor, his wife, and his friend's wife, were at the neighbor's house. The two men both got into arguments with their wives and decided to go out drinking down the street. A few hours later, I'm woken up by my sister banging on my bedroom door. I was staying with them at the time because a car crashed, doing probably 80 and 25 miles per hour right next to our home. I jumped out of bed and got outside to see the neighbor's car crashed into a tree and two men trapped inside. The tree the car hit stopped them from ramming into another neighbor's house, and they hit it so hard, the battery was in the street after ours. Their car caught fire, and we had to watch them burn. Still see it and smell it every now and then when trying to sleep. I had never met the wife, so I had no idea who she was when she came up and asked me what happened, so I said some guy crashed his car. She took off running after she recognized the car. Can't believe I told her that her husband died so bluntly. My former roommate had a great job, made great money, had his own house in which I rented a room. The only problem was he was a serious alcoholic and a shitty person. He'd get up at 4:30 to go to work, get off at 2, and then hit the bar until 11, every single night. Unless he had a girl coming over, then he'd come home at 10, do a quick cleanup of his filthy room and have obnoxious and very inconsiderate loud sex. He hit a guy who was riding his bike drunk, driving his way home one night, fled the scene, came home, and went to the neighbor's house and said he hit a pole. The neighbor called the police, and on the way to the house, they found the guy he hit with his front bumper next to the body. He went to jail for vehicular homicide, did 6 months, and got out. Now he lives with his parents and can't get a job because his story is a little infamous in our town. His sister took over his mortgage and lives in his house now. All he does all day is cry on Facebook about how life isn't fair and bad-mouths the guy he killed. My father punched a window out of anger, severed the artery and ligament in his bicep, almost bled out, effectively removed his ability to work with his hands, which was the one thing he had going for him. He then became a moody pause alcoholic. Actually, he always was one, but way worse after this. He then beat the neighbor across the road with a pipe after they got drunk and got into an argument. He was arrested and went to jail. My parents lost the family home. They ended up splitting. I went no contact with him. 2 years later, he took his life. An ex-girlfriend of mine, lovely person, was out at a bar with a friend one night. They had a meal and played pool. When they left, for some reason she drove his car. I don't know why, but I know that when she and I were together, she asked to drive my car just for the experience of driving a different car. Maybe that was it. And I imagine driving in someone else's car, you take a few extra seconds to adjust the seat and the mirrors and get your bearings. Unbeknownst to her, a teenager was driving a Mustang nearby. He was pissed because someone passed him a mile earlier and his ego was hurt. He decided to catch up to the guy and floored the Mustang, getting up to speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. As my ex pulled out of the parking lot to cross the median, she had no way of seeing the Mustang barreling toward her over a hill. He crashed into her, killing her and her passenger. 2 seconds earlier or later, and they would not have made contact. I went to his trial. I remember her poor mother sitting there stone-faced while testimony was given. Several lives were ruined in that moment. My ex was only 26. She never got married, never had kids, never found her way in life. When I was a teenager, my dad and this dude had beef with each other. My dad was dating this guy's ex-wife, and he didn't like that. They bumped into each other at a bar and exchanged some words. My dad left the bar, and the dude was waiting for him outside. A car rolled up, and somebody handed the dude a handgun. He pointed at his head from about 2 feet away and pulled the trigger. Luckily for my father, the gun jammed. My pops wasn't taking any chances, so he took off running. The dude cleared the gun and emptied the clip, missing all but one shot that hit my dad in the back. My dad was already downtown, and the hospital was only a couple blocks away, or so he thought. Unluckily for my padre, the hospital was under renovation and preparing for relocation. When he saw that it was under construction, he slumped over and called 911 for an ambulance. The surgeons removed his kidney because it was too damaged to repair, and survived. The dude got an attempted murder charge and almost 15 years in prison.